So in this lesson we're going to bring together what we've just learnt about the treble and bass clef to produce what is known as the grand staff. The grand staff is very useful because it shows us the full range of notes going from very, very low to very, very high. And it's used by pianists because they have a huge number of notes that they can play on their instrument, 88 to be exact. So when we put the bass and the treble clefs together, they look a bit like this. If you've ever seen any music written for the piano, this will be very familiar. Now what's quite interesting about the grand staff is that the treble and bass clefs are spaced out a little bit. This is because there's actually no overlap between the notes that are represented on the bass clef and those notes that are represented on the treble clef. In fact, we have to do something special to fill in the gap that sits between the treble and bass clefs. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to write down all the different pitches that exist on an instrument like the piano. As you'll remember, the lines on the bass clef represent, going from the bottom, G, B, D, F, and A. You'll also remember that the first line of the treble clef is an E. So there's quite a lot of space between the A, which is the top line of the bass clef, and the E, which is the bottom line of the treble clef. Somewhere we're going to have to fit in a B, C, and a D, so that we've filled in all the gaps, and we can show all the notes on the music. So how are we going to do this? Well, it's almost like we need some extra lines and spaces to fill in this gap. And that's kind of what we do. So, if we want to go one note higher than the A that sits at the top line of the bass clef, then we sit the note in the sort of imaginary space that sits above the staff. This is a B, naturally. The next note we need to be able to show is a C. Now, we've just shown a note that sits in a kind of space, and so we sort of need a way of showing a line in the music, even though there kind of isn't one here, it's just an empty space. So what we do is whenever we want to show this C that sits between the treble and the bass clef, we draw a little special line that just appears for that particular pitch. This note is very special in music. It's known as middle C. And perhaps now you'll realise why. Because this C sits exactly in the middle of the treble and the bass staffs. But we've not quite made it all the way to the E, which as we said was the first line in the treble clef. So we need to put a D in somewhere. The logical place for this is just in the space underneath that E on the treble clef. And so now we've filled in all the gaps. Going from the top line of the bass clef, which is an A, we've written in a B, the middle C on its own special line, a D which sits in the next space up, and then the E, which is the bottom line of the treble clef. So, that joins both the treble and the bass clef together, and we can write down all the notes that sit between the bottom G on the bass clef and the top F on the treble clef. Let's have a listen to all those notes.